Hello and welcome back to Podium Pop. My name is Celine and I'm here with my co-host Gracie. We have a very exciting episode for you today. We are going to be doing a race recap as well as a catch-up on some news for the Qatar Grand Prix. A bit of a disclaimer, Gracie and I are both sick. Gracie's a little more sick than I am.
Yep.
So we sound a little congested. So bear with us on that. But before we get started, make sure you go follow us on social media. We post on TikTok and on Instagram quite a bit, as well as we post our episodes every Monday on Spotify and on YouTube. So make sure you're following us on all forms of social media. We do a lot of updates throughout the week with news that drops. So if you want to make sure you're catching everything, follow us on there, put our notifications on, and leave us a comment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's go ahead and get started. We will pop the bottle and let's get right on into it.
We gotta get into it because this pretty crazy week.
Crazy race.
Crazy race.
Before we get too much into the race, let's go over a couple of things that happened before we get into it.
Some exciting, some less exciting.
Yeah, so first thing that happened this week was Formula One announced that they are doing a diversity and inclusion charter. Okay. They've tried this in the past. I have a lot of thoughts on it. I think it is a step in the right direction, but I don't have a lot of hope for it.
Yeah, I would agree.
Like I said, they've tried it in the past. There's been no kind of accountability. There was no follow-up. It kind of just stopped being talked about. And I do worry that this is going to be the case for the other thing. There's a lot of changes happening in Formula One, the FIA, all of that. So I do think it's interesting that it's coming during all of this change and coming so far at the end of the year.
I know.
You would think that something like this, they would kind of announce it during winter break or at the very beginning of the 2025 season.
Yeah, it's very interesting timing.
I don't know if it's because they're trying to distract from other things happening or if it's that, who knows? Like with Formula One, like it very well could be like there's a scandal going on that's the news is gonna drop at any minute, and they're like, "Ooh, let's put this out real quick before we get started."
We were already working on it. Don't worry, we told you.
Oh my gosh! Like, thank goodness we started this diversity and inclusion charter.
Yeah.
All of the teams signed off on it. It's in collaboration with all 10 teams and the FIA, and then obviously Formula One. We'll see. Yeah, we're gonna see. So far, they have all these like plans, and they have a guideline of what they want this charter and this project to accomplish, but they don't have any like actual detailed plans. Like they didn't say like this is how we're going to do it. They're like, we want to have diversity, and we want to have encourage people in minority groups to get involved in Formula One, but they didn't say how they're going to do any of this. They have concepts of a plan. They literally have concepts of a plan. So
not shocking.
We'll see what happens with that.
Yeah. I don't know. Also, we weren't really around too much in 2022, but a lot of people were saying
it was 2020.
Oh, 2020.
Yeah.
A lot of people are saying they tried this in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that didn't come to fruition. So maybe this is round 2. We'll see what happens.
We'll see. Yeah. But again, I'm cautiously optimistic on the front of this.
Great way to put that, by the way.
Thank you. Some other news. Let's see. FIA president, he's back at it again.
Yeah, he is so back at it again. We have seen, after Brazil, the GPDA came out with their statement on Instagram, told them to the public, and then one of the main things in that is they asked where their penalty money was going. When they get penalized during a race, where is that going? And he basically came out this week and said, that is none of your business.
Yeah.
Where your team's money is going.
It was also in reference to, like, I don't know if it was George specifically or a representative of the GPD. I don't know who actually said the statement. But it was basically like, hey, like, we need to be aware of when, like, people internally are getting fired. Like, you need to, like, notify us of these things. We just shouldn't find out at the same time that the general public finds out. And he basically was like, well, I don't ask you to notify me when someone on your team gets fired. It's like, it's completely different. Like, you are a governing body. Like, you have to be transparent with the people that you are governing. Like that's like the number one rule of governing a body.
He can't do it well.
He can't do it well. A lot of issues with him. Speaking of people being fired.
Yes. So one of the stewards, Tim Mayer. He was fired this week, and he was fired via text message. So like,
very cold.
That's great. I feel like I'm back at my internship in 2020 when my boss texting me.
Let's unpack that a little bit at a different time.
Yeah, sure. Actually, no, it was fine. It was a paid internship, and he was like, hey, sorry, I can't pay you anymore. And I was like, what the fuck? And he said it over text, and I was like, okay. Anyway, got flashbacks.
A little Gracie lore for you.
Yeah.
A little lore drop.
Great lore.
But yeah, no, they're dropping like flies.
No, and like, what is happening? We see directly going into today's race, we see directly how this is affecting the race with uneven penalties and with, firing someone, getting a new race director. None of it is cohesive or coherent right now. And it's messy.
Very messy.
Yeah.
Some other news. Monza.
Yes, Monza has been
got
extended till 2031. 6 more years.
Yes. Tell them about the news that you found out.
Okay, so Imola always falls around my birthday weekend, and I realized in 2027, if the calendar stays the same and it tracks the same, race day for Imola will be on my 30th birthday. So we are already planning. It
would be so much fun.
Keeping our fingers crossed. I know we'll have to wait like another year and some to get the 2027 calendar. Oh, 2 years. But still, gonna be so exciting. So watch this space.
Yeah, we're starting the manifesting early for this one.
Yeah, absolutely.
That we will be in Monza or Imola for Gracie's 30th. I almost said 20th birthday.
I wish.
No, you don't.
Well, no, I don't want to be that young.
For your 30th birthday. But that'd be really fun.
Yeah, that'd be so
I wish
fun.
there was a race near my birthday, but mine's smack dab in the middle of summer break.
Yeah.
Boo. It's okay. More news coming out. Paul Aaron.
Yes.
First of all, a quick recap of, we're not going to deep dive into Formula 2 too much, but there were 2 races this weekend.
Yep.
Paul Aaron actually got his very first Formula 2 race win on race number 2. On the same weekend that he announced that he is going to be reserve driver for Alpine.
Yes.
Which, there was like a picture going around about Zach, McLaren CEO, going and like congratulating Paul Aaron after his race win.
Yeah.
And it was like the weekend he was announced as an Alpine reserve driver, and they're like, Zach, like, you could do the funniest thing ever.
Literally
like, what is he planning with this stuff? The other race winner for the first race was Ollie.
Woohoo!
So super exciting. He hasn't had a great year in Formula 2, so to see some good news for him.
Yeah.
Coming where at the beginning of the weekend, people were also making jokes that Ollie was going to be racing this weekend because Nico Hülkenberg was out on Thursday for media with a cold, and everyone was like, "Get ready, Ollie,
let's go!"
And he didn't end up doing it, and he won. So
he's also the first F2 race winner in Qatar. This is the first time they've raced there.
Yeah.
So very, very exciting.
Very exciting. Let's see.
Should we talk about Formula 1 Academy?
Yes.
Very exciting weekend for Formula 1 Academy.
Yes.
This weekend they unfortunately could only do one of 2 races because Sunday morning at one of the sports series, I'm going to be really honest with you, I'm not sure if it was F2 or not. Something happened to the barrier and there wasn't enough time to fix it before they had to get going with Formula 1 stuff, which is really unfortunate, but Abbi Pulling won the 2024 championship for Formula 1 Academy.
Yeah, we are big Abbi Pulling fans.
Yeah.
We were so excited to see her win. She deserves it. She was on the podium for every single Formula 1 Academy race this year. Majority of them she was winning.
Yeah.
We got to see her win in Miami.
Yes.
Which was super cool. So we were super excited. She didn't actually win the race. This was actually one where she came in second.
Yeah.
Dorian Pinn ended up winning the race, which she was freaking adorable on the podium.
Oh my gosh.
She was giving George Russell energy.
She was giving George Russell
big GRE.
Yeah. GRE.
Big GRE.
Big GRE.
But Abbi Pulling did come away with the championship win, which was super exciting.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to see what she can do. She gets a seat in GB3, correct?
Yes.
So she gets a seat next year in GB3, and just to see what she's going to be able to do with that is awesome.
It's also fully funded too, so she doesn't have to worry about funding that in any way, which is usually a big
issue in the support series leading up to it. This is a good segue. Abbi Pulling is part of, she represents Alpine in the in Formula 1 Academy, which is a good segue into Alpine about there might be a driver change.
Okay, this was the funniest thing possible, to be honest with you guys. Mm-hmm. I think it might have been, like, right at the end of the race, Planet F1 on Instagram announced, and they were like, Jack Doohan is replacing Esteban Ocon for Abu Dhabi. And MJ sent it to us, and we were still, like, freaking out about the end of the race, and we saw that, and I was like, wait a minute, what is going on?
Yeah.
Alpine, like, these rumors sparking at the end of one of the most chaotic races of the season is hilarious to me.
It was definitely giving, like, a, let me just drop this. Maybe you won't notice.
Yeah. They would have to announce it tomorrow.
Officially, yeah. It'd have to be soon. So, basically, the rumor is that Esteban Ocon will not be participating in the final race in Abu Dhabi next weekend, and it will actually be Jack Doohan stepping in, who has announced that he is racing for Alpine in the 2025 season, that he'll be stepping in and doing the full weekend for Alpine.
It's crazy.
And there's just a lot of theories.
It's disrespectful, I'm going to be honest.
It is.
Esteban was their first driver to win for them, first driver to score points for them.
Well, I am seeing that it wasn't Alpine's decision to do that. I'm seeing it was Esteban's decision to do that.
Wait, what?
I'm seeing rumors that he was so fed up with it being like an issue with the front wing and how he doesn't have the upgrades. He's over it. I was seeing that he's choosing not to participate in the race and that they're putting Jack in because of that.
That's so interesting.
I don't know. It could be either way.
It could be either way. I'm not sure.
Because we've talked about it before when we thought that there was a chance that Haas was putting Ollie in for the rest of the season in replacement of K-Mag. Like, really, realistically, especially with Jack, like, him participating in the race this weekend, he would still retain rookie status.
Yeah, he would.
Which would, not only he would be able to do the rookie testing, but he would also have a full race experience going into next year.
Is Esteban just going to hang out in the Haas garage, or is he, like...
He's like, I'm going to my
early.
new team. I don't know if he would show up at all.
It's giving when Fernando left...
Oh, yeah, Alpine.
And immediately was walking into the Aston garage.
Yeah, I saw a picture of, someone posted a picture of Oscar, Esteban, and, Fernando when they were all on Alpine together, and be like, the three of them all left in the messiest way possible, but like...
Literally. The three horsemen of the apocalypse.
Yeah, literally. But no, I think it does lead into... There's a lot of suspicion, so we'll talk about it a little bit later, on why, but I do think it's interesting that if it is Esteban choosing not to race in the final race, is there more to the story? Is there more people? Is this part of is this a puzzle piece in a bigger picture?
I think it could
of
be.
A theory.
It could be a bigger puzzle piece in the
which we'll discuss that theory later in the episode for sure, because it's in reference to other things.
Yeah. Real quick, talking about Franco, outside of the race. We'll talk about his race, in a minute. But I saw today that RB is no longer looking at Franco for next year, allegedly. And, that Franco was also seen talking to, not Oliver Oakes at Alpine, someone else at Alpine. I forget who it was. But he was seen talking to Alpine this weekend. So... I have said this before. I said it over the summer. I'll say it again. Alpine, if you screw over Jack Doohan, I will be in your walls.
Yeah. Okay, and honestly, Franco came in, like, guns a-blazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I would say that Franco and Liam have very similar stories where they came in and they had nothing to lose and they absolutely proved that they could perform. Sure. And then as soon as the pressure got on and they needed to perform to prove that they could deserve a seat for the next year, they kind of choked.
I'm going to defend Franco a bit in saying he's driving a Williams.
That's true.
Alex Albon can barely drive that Williams.
That's true.
Yeah.
But I do think that right now, Liam is not doing great.
No.
And I think Franco's not doing great. And the reason I bring that up is because now that Franco's not really being talked about for that fourth spot at RB with if Checo leaves.
Yeah.
We gotta talk about Checo. We'll talk about Checo. Yeah. But people are still thinking that there's a chance that Carlos goes to Red Bull next year. And honestly, like, if you're Christian Horner and you're looking at the four people you have on your team, Yuki, Liam, and Checo are not consistent. They have good weekends every once in a while, but they are consistently in the back with the Haas, the Williams, with the Saubers, with the Alpines, like they are in the back, and to have the ability to bring in someone like Carlos Sainz, why would you not? Why would you not? And I get the whole political thing between their dads, blah 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 blah. Get over it.
I don't think Carlos would only go if he's getting a Red Bull seat. He's not going to RB.
No, and I truly think that at this point Liam is not ready to go to Red Bull.
No,
I think Yuki, I would like to say he is ready to go to Red Bull, but I don't think he is. Because I still think he doesn't have the consistency. He has really good weekends, but there are still very often times that he is still behind Liam.
Yeah.
And I think that they need someone strong to come in and take back the Constructors' Cup in the final year that they possibly could. Because 2026 is going to shake up the standings completely.
Oh, it's going to shake
2025 could be the last chance that Red Bull wins the Constructors' Cup. In who knows how long, because again, we don't know what's happening in 2026.
Yeah, we saw how Red Bull got it with their cars, constructor-wise, and was winning these constructors, but with the shakeup of 2026, it could be Alpine that gets it.
Yeah.
And then it's all of a sudden Alpine's winning it all.
Yep. And it could be
anybody.
That's the scary part. So to say, we're going to give Checo another year to prove himself, sorry, buddy, you don't have the time.
No, he doesn't.
You really don't. And it's just ridiculous that someone that is consistently on the podium or in the top 5, Carlos Sainz, is going to a team like Williams when there is other people on these top teams that are not performing.
Yeah,
it honestly pisses me off.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm getting really freaking mad about it.
She's getting heated.
Carlos Sainz deserves better.
He deserves so much better.
He pisses me off all the time. Don't get me wrong, but he deserves better. He should not be going to Williams. He is literally outperforming 90% of the people on the grid.
Yeah.
And he is going to the team that is in second to last.
That can't fix their car.
Or
can't get a
drivable
car.
They're
they can
literally
fix that shit. They
driving it's what's worse than a tractor?
A bar of soap.
Yeah, they're literally driving a bar of soap. And Carlos is supposed to go there next year?
If
I was Carlos Sainz Sr., I would be causing a scene, I think.
I think they try. I don't know. I think they tried everything they could. Carlos is immediately doing Williams testing in Abu Dhabi next or 2 weeks, I guess, after the season ends. So I think if he goes in and does that, I don't think he's getting that Red Bull seat.
No, I think that they would have to, and Christian Horner specifically said that we're going to see how Checo does next week. I think that Checo's going to, the results are going to come in for Abu Dhabi, that race, and Red Bull's going to have to make a decision.
You're out of time.
You're out of time.
You are literally out of time, and you're going to be, no offense, stuck with Checo for 2025.
Yep.
Or kick him out quarter of the way through the season, and you're going to be fucked because of it.
Yeah, except another thing, I think that it's actually already decided that Checo's retiring, because Christian Horner, again, in another statement this weekend, was like, hey, we are going to see the race results, but we're going to see what Checo thinks and where his head is at.
Retiring when?
Retiring after
this year?
Abu Dhabi this year. And I think it's more so that they are kicking him out, but they're choosing to let him have the narrative that he is retiring, so that it basically saves him the embarrassment. And at this point, it would not really surprise me if Carlos actually already did have something signed, but they have to wait until Checo announced he's retiring in order to announce that Carlos is taking over the Red Bull seat.
Yeah, absolutely.
Guys, I need Max and Carlos on the same team. I need Carlos in a car that he can perform in. And I do think that if he would have had a couple more years with Ferrari, he could have continued getting podiums, and I think he could have been a contender for the World Championship.
I agree, absolutely.
Because Ferrari does have a great car right now, but he just kind of got screwed over.
Uh-huh.
I don't know. I gotta stop talking about it.
I'm also kind of glad he's getting out of Ferrari, though. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Ferraris, it's just other than Lewis Hamilton, anybody that goes to Ferrari, they will be second to Charles.
Yeah.
So I do think it's just interesting that they're bringing in Lewis.
I can't wait for next year.
And next year's gonna be so messy at Ferrari.
I think
already
it's gonna be
Charles
messy everywhere.
Already Charles is has this chip on his shoulder that he's oh my gosh, I'm having to give up stuff for the team constantly. Yes. I'm they hate Carlos. They literally fired Carlos for you to keep your seat with Lewis.
You're
going to have a big storm coming when Lewis is there.
Like, I would love to reiterate the fact that nobody on that fucking team besides Carlos's direct Team 55 shows up for him when he's on the podium.
Yep.
And that sucks so badly.
I love Carlos Sainz. I go back and forth, but right now I really love him.
The scale has tipped a little bit, and I'm leaning more towards loving him.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna.
It comes in waves.
Take the fan behavior, saying that they always say Carlos fatigue right now.
Yeah,
and I think that's okay.
That is okay.
It's okay to have fatigue of a driver.
Yeah. Then last thing to discuss. So we'll discuss it after we discuss qualifying.
Okay.
So this was a sprint weekend. We're gonna get to the race now. And it was a sprint weekend. So sprint practice, pretty normal.
Yeah.
Sprint quali, it was Lando, George, Oscar as the qualifying order. And then the sprint race was pretty standard up until the very end. Yeah. So in the sprint race, the top three, it was Oscar was able to get in front of George early. Like, he got the jump on him at the start. So it was Lando, Oscar, and George. And it was a close battle the whole time. George was nipping at Oscar's heels.
George was barking.
And the only way that really... The reason why Oscar survived in P2 that race is because Lando kept having to restrain himself from going away with it and giving Oscar DRS.
Yes.
AKA the Carlos Sainz effect.
Yeah. You could... sorry to interrupt. You could also see it after the race. They put out, like, the data for everything. And when you look at top speeds and race pace data, Oscar and Lando were at the very, very bottom because, like, they were just pulling each. They were using the DRS to pull each other through. Mm-hmm. So also, like, not to jump ahead, but going into sprint or going into quali in the race, we were like, we have no clue what their pace is this weekend.
Yeah, and you know what? It kind of made me mad. A lot of Lando, like hardcore Lando fans, were very upset about him having to do this. This is literally teamwork. That's like, they are going for a Constructors' Cup. Why would he not restrain himself and give his teammate DRS?
Yeah, that makes no sense.
That's literally, like, the goal of the Constructors' Cup.
Also, if it was flipped, like, the hardcore Lando fans would be like, why didn't Oscar give him DRS?
No, literally. So that happened throughout the whole race.
Yeah.
Other than that, everyone was like, okay, like, it was the final lap. Like, they did pull away... Like, not even a full, like, second from George. It was so close. Carlos was right behind George. It was all, like, the top four were literally bunched together.
I was sweating that entire race.
But they were literally coming around the last curve and we're like, okay, they got it. Lando won, Oscar, and then out of nowhere.
Literally nowhere. Also, before you say this, Lando comes over the radio and is like, is this the last lap? And his race engineer goes, yes, last lap. Stay this order. We want to keep this order. We're happy with this.
Mm-hmm.
And
Lando decides, you know what? Fuck that. I'm letting Oscar through.
I'm going to repay.
So he pulls to the side. They're side by side. Literally right before the finish line, he lets Oscar go in front of him. He gets behind Oscar. They finish the race with Oscar winning the sprint race.
Yeah.
And then Lando, George, and Carlos. And to pull off that maneuver, one, specifically when your team said not to because they didn't want to risk it.
Yeah.
But two, to actually pull it off in such like a bunched up clump. It could have been really bad.
It could have been so bad. If you haven't, you should... A bunch of people have posted the video from the grandstand perspective. It looks insane the way they maneuver that perfectly.
It literally looks like a fighter jet like sequence.
No, yes. Like a perfect dance move. Like, I don't even know. It looks crazy.
And the fact that they were able to, like, Lando and Oscar were able to pull that off without communication with, like, the team radios helping them because, again, they told Lando not to do it. They didn't want to risk it.
Yeah.
But Lando was very firm. I think the switch in Brazil during the sprint race has been weighing on him a bit, and I do think that he did it to basically, like, be like, okay, we're even. I can get this off my conscience. Like, we can move on from this.
Yeah.
But I also just like to think that he was just helping his buddy Oscar out.
Yeah, he for sure was. And also, talking about hardcore Lando fans and hardcore Oscar fans, guys, it's like a much better world out there when you're just a full throw Lando Star fan.
Oh my gosh. I can't imagine, like, having, like, what I would do if I was a fan and I hated the other driver on the same team. Like the Charles and Carlos fans that like dislike the other one. I'm like, how do you like sleep at night? Like literally I would be up all night if I loved Oscar and hated Lando or vice versa. Like it would be so hard.
I'm just like scrolling and like watching people on the internet like fighting. I'm like la 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 la. Oh, look, a picture of them hugging. La la la.
Yeah,
no.
no.
Oh, they congratulated each other.
Yeah, no, it's I don't have a lot of peace over Formula One, but that is one thing that I do have peace about.
Absolutely.
Is the unity, because despite there being issues in the past, or issues for those listening on Spotify, I did do the little finger quotes, issues in the past with Lando and Oscar, at the end of the day they're mature enough that they get over it and they realize, hey, we're a team, let's move on from this. And it's never been a long standing issue like it is at other teams. Ferrari,
I think it also helps that like neither of them wanted team orders this year. Like, obviously, the team fucked up in Hungary and then had to give the whole thing. Lando, the team orders to switch back. Like, Oscar obviously didn't want that. He would have rather pit first to get ahead. Lando, obviously, he said many times he didn't want team orders for Brazil, but they knew fighting when they were still in the WDC fight, like, an extra point can count for so much. So I think that helps that, like, neither of them wanted that, but they knew they have helped each other out throughout the year.
Yeah.
And I also think Lando realizes that Oscar has helped him out a ton this year.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So that was the sprint race. Oh, yeah. Also, Haas got some good points in the sprint race as well. I did write that down and highlight it, so I definitely, I guess, wanted to get that point across.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's move on to quali.
Yeah.
Quali was stressful. At the end of qualifying, right when it ended, technically, Max had pole.
Yes.
And then it was George, and then Lando, and then Oscar.
Yep.
Well, during one of the outlaps, basically George went on the radio and complained about how Max was driving so slow that he was impeding him, but he was doing a slow lap. Normally, that would not be an issue. In fact, it's pretty common.
Yeah.
Most people do that. They slow down in order to create a gap to safely finish a qualifying lap for not only them, but the other drivers around them.
Yeah.
Because otherwise everyone would be going at once and crashing into each other. George complained about enough that it got the stewards' attention. They called Max to the stewards after qualifying and ended up giving him a 1-place grid penalty, which gave George pole. I don't agree with that.
1-place grid penalty?
I don't agree with the penalty at all, because George was not on an outlap, and Max was definitely, he was not on a fast lap, and Max was definitely not the only person that was doing this. Everyone was doing it because everyone always does this.
Yeah.
There is in no way, it did not hinder George from completing a fast lap. It was far enough away from the finish line that didn't even, for him to, start ramping up for his fast lap. It was fine.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people call bullshit on the fact that Max got that penalty point.
Oh, absolutely. That is, correct me if I'm wrong, we have not seen something like that before.
No.
Also, a 1-place grid penalty?
Yeah.
And
I do think that this was,
the straw that broke the camel's back.
Exactly. Because not only is there some would say trickle effect from this happening, and Max becoming very upset with the FIA and the penalties. And George himself. But also, I think this has been a long time coming. Just skipping forward ahead to after the race in media, because this is the first time that this call was made after they completed media for qualifying. So we didn't get any of their reactions to this until after the race, really. And Max was fucking pissed.
He was so pissed.
He said in the media straight up, I have never, he was basically calling George out, and he basically said something along the lines of, I have never sat in the steward's office and had a driver so blatantly trying to screw me over.
Yeah.
And it was, do you have the quote?
Yeah. Somebody asked him and said, are you going to talk about it with Russell? And Max said, not right now, but you know what it is. He always acts extremely polite in front of the cameras, but if you sit together with him personally, he's a completely different person. I truly can't stand that, then you might think, well, fuck off. I don't want anything to do with you.
Like, it's like we haven't gotten such like a direct like Mad Max quote about a specific driver in the media in a long time.
A very long time.
And kind of missed it. I really did miss it.
Also, apparently, before in the driver's briefing, Max and George...
Before the holding room for the driver's parade.
Yes, Max and George got into it. We don't know what, but Crofty told us we're going to want to watch Drive to Survive.
Yes. Yeah, they basically said... it was actually Ted.
Oh, Ted, yes.
Ted said that Max was going up to George and being like, you and your FIA buddies, like, I forget what he said, something like better watch your back or something like that.
Yeah, he did say that.
But he said, that's the polite version of it. I'm not going to say what he actually said. Guys, I swear to God, Netflix, if you don't have a camera and mic on them during this moment, you're dead to me. And I need you to pay them enough money to recreate this moment because I need to see it with my own eyes.
I can't believe they're going to make me watch Drive to Survive.
And I can't believe we're not going to be able to see that for like another like 3 months.
Oh, God, I hope they put out Drive to Survive earlier.
I doubt it. They'll probably come out in February. So excited for that. I love it though. It's getting feisty, and George and Max have had a very tumultuous.
Ooh. Don't ask me to say a word.
Tumultuous. Relationship in the past. So I do wonder if this is going to cause more issues. Another thing to note is that as Max was kind of spouting off in the media all about this, George had already technically finished media. So we aren't going to really get George's reaction until next week. Which, like, probably Mercedes' PR team thinks it's for the best, I'm sure, because it gives him a chance to calm down about it. But
I can't wait to hear George's response.
I can't wait. I will be tuned in to all media for Abu Dhabi.
I cannot wait for Media Day. Actually, I can.
Yeah.
I know it's going to be depressed as hell.
Hopefully he gets some time and is able to kind of... It's just one more race, guys. This has been the longest season. This is literally, like, they're tired. They're so fucking tired. They are exhausted. You can tell that they are ready for this season to be over with.
We're going to go into another fuck-ass season with 5 triple headers next year. We'll talk about it later. Don't you worry.
Mm-hmm. But anyways, that is quali, and now we can get into the race. Okay. So, the race...
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Let's start a tally of... odd penalties. We're at 1.
Yeah. Already we're at 1.
Yeah.
So first lap starts, and off the line, Max gets the lead again. So that's kind of karma.
Which he also told George he would. He said, I'm getting that position.
Oh, yeah, he said, I'm getting that position, George. And George is like,
okay.
This is a reenactment. We don't know what they actually said. But we can only assume. So yeah, Max gets the lead, and then it's Lando, George, Charles, Oscar, Carlos. So already, Max and Lando start pulling away a bit, but before we can even finish the first lap, there is some incidents. In fact, 2 different incidents happen on the first lap.
Yeah.
So the first one that happens, is between Nico Hülkenberg, Esteban Ocon, and, Franco Colapinto.
Yep.
And they basically crash into each other. I do think this one was Nico's fault.
Yes, it legally was.
But it caused damage enough that Ocon and Colapinto immediately had to retire the car. And I'm pretty sure, I know Hülkenberg did retire. I don't think it was immediate, though. I think he did carry on for a little bit. Another incident that happened was between Alex and Lance.
Yes.
Alex did finish the race, by the way. Spoiler alert. But Lance also had to retire the car eventually. But it wasn't immediate.
Alex also said during that, over his radio after it happened, he was like, I knew he was going to do that. I could tell right away he was going to do that. Mm-hmm. So, what are we doing, Lance?
Yeah, there's been a lot of beef with Alex and Lance, it seems. Because they're so close to each other often, they just don't seem like they like each other very much.
Oh, wow.
In my opinion.
I don't know if I've ever,
just past races, it feels like it's always the 2 of them together.
Yeah.
So, already, first lap is pretty chaotic. Lance does get a 10-second penalty, and he serves that, but he also, at that point, had enough damage that they wanted to retire the car, but he had to serve the 10-second penalty and then do a lap, because if he didn't serve that 10-second penalty before retiring the car, technically, it would cause a grid place penalty for the next race. So he literally goes into the pits, He serves the 10-second penalty. He leaves the pits, does a lap, and then he retires the car.
Yeah. Which, so fair.
So fair, but it's just so silly.
So silly.
Next piece of the race that happened was we start hearing talks about Lewis being investigated for having a false start.
Yes.
He does eventually get a penalty from that. Lewis was having a lot of trouble with the car today.
A lot of trouble.
He was struggling, and he definitely, I think, it's just so interesting to me because Lewis is supposed to be one of the best race car drivers of all time. And I do think he is. Yes. He is. But he's been struggling so much this year with the Mercedes that you have to question, is George just also accidentally one of the best race car drivers of all time? Or is there, like, a difference in their cars that's causing enough issues? Because George very consistently is doing better than Lewis.
Yeah.
Not all the time, but consistently enough to you're just like questioning, like, why is Lewis struggling so much?
Yeah.
And then it also begs the question is it what Lewis prefers in a car is different from George? Is it gonna cause issues if he has a different preference of Charles at Ferrari?
Yeah. Who knows?
I don't know. I'm a little concerned about it.
I will say they are having some of the same struggles because Lewis, the turning.
Well, on the first stint, it was only Lewis having the issues.
Yeah,
Once George got a different set of tires on, in the second stint, he was having the same issues as Lewis.
Mercedes also screwed George over with their tires.
Yeah, oh my god, he had a 7-second pit stop.
Yeah.
After with the tire, his first pit stop, tire change between first stint and second stint.
Yeah.
And that pretty much secured that he would not be on the podium.
Yeah.
From the get-go. Another person having trouble with their car was Fernando, who's complaining a lot about the straights and how slow they were on the straights.
He literally came over and was like, for 2 years now!
Yeah, he was, like, fed up.
He was upset.
Liam had a bit of a moment where he was bumped off during the race. He rejoined pretty quickly. He was, 7 seconds behind after he rejoined, and then within 2 laps was up 2 seconds between him and the next person.
Yeah.
So, again, there's so much potential with Liam. He just doesn't have that experience that I think someone that would move into the Red Bull seat would need.
Yeah.
My opinion, only. There are a lot of restarts because of all of the bumps and crashes and people going off. One of the restarts, I believe it was the second restart after the safety car, everything was all like, okay, we're gonna get started, let's go, and then you just see Checo completely off, and he slid off basically, and he did rejoin, but he eventually did retire the car as well.
That was something with the car.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that was at the last one because I think that was happening as Lando was doing his stop and go.
Okay.
I believe. I believe.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about the stop and go now?
Yeah. Okay. So, Alex Albon's mirror decided. Also, if you can find that video, I wish I saved it. I didn't. It just flew off. Funniest thing possible. It literally looks like it just goes boing. Alex's mirror flies off and lands at the end of the straight, kind of in the middle of the road, and
not a beaver.
Not a beaver. Yuki thought his engineer said it was a beaver in the road. Which
was a mirror. I don't know even how he got that, but
no, I don't mirror beaver. Fine. I can kind of hear it. So while this is happening, we don't see it happening when we're watching on F1 TV. We just see it keep going, track yellow, track green, track yellow, track green, back and forth. But so many times I kept going, why? And they're like, okay. And then I was like, well, I said it 12 times.
Yeah.
I feel like. And all of this is happening within the span of a minute.
Mm-hmm.
The track is going back and forth from yellow to green in this one sector right here. And so when the track is yellow in the sector, you're supposed to lift. You're supposed to slow down, obviously, for safety. But that mirror had been there for a very long time. And they weren't making a decision on what to do. And Lando and Max were passing Valtteri Bottas. Because he was down, and when that happened, Bottas had to go into the middle because he got the blue flags to go to let them pass, and he ran over the mirror that was in the middle of the road because they didn't pull out a VSC or any kind of thing to stop and have someone run out really, really quickly and get it. I'm gonna be honest, I could be somewhere here. I feel like we could have thrown a VSC when We're kind of far away. Had someone go get it real quick, or with a full safety car, have someone get it, come back. But no. Both of us ran over it. It caused debris everywhere. It caused both Lewis and Carlos to get punctures in their tire. Mm-hmm. So then they had to pit and change it. And I'm kind of explaining everything before I get to the stop and go. And then while that is happening, so they go change their cars for the punctures. Oscar also decides to pit during this time. He's going.
Oscar pit actually right before the actual safety car got called.
Yeah.
It did kind of screw him a bit, but.
Yeah. So then now we're in the full safety, and this is when it's happening of like the flags coming out. The flags are changing so quickly. Lando fails to see that it is changing, so he did not lift for the safety car, which that is a concern, and you should be braking, you should be slowing down. This is a safety issue. We are not going to argue on that at all.
Yeah, he deserved a penalty.
He deserved a penalty, absolutely. So, but also if you go back and watch, you can see how quickly it changes and how easily it can be missed. So, I'm not going to fault him on that 1,000%. Mm-hmm. Then laps are going by. Lando goes in and pits. He comes back out. It is still going on. And then Max comes over the radio right as that's happening. And he was like, Lando didn't lift. Lando got closer to me. I know he didn't lift.
Which, earlier when I talked about the trickle effect, Max was
Yes.
mad at the FIA about the penalty that was given.
Yep.
And he said, you know what, if I'm getting a penalty for a stupid reason, I'm going to call out every single thing I see. I don't blame Max for calling it out.
Yeah.
I would have done the same. Lando even came across in the media and said, I also would have done the same. I would have, if I noticed it, I would have called it out as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
it makes sense.
But would he have called it out if he wasn't already pissed? Maybe, but maybe not. And I honestly don't think that the FAA would have even noticed if it wasn't called out.
Yeah, absolutely. So then we never got, I might be wrong, we never got a full thing that was saying he was being investigated for a long time. Like, literally, you left to go down to the lobby of our apartment, came back up, and it was still going on. This was quite a few laps later when finally they came over, and they were like, Lando, you're being investigated. And then so quickly, it was, you have a 10-second stop and go.
Yes.
Let's put a 10-second stop and go into perspective. If you get a 10-second penalty, you will just be moved down 10 points. You could hypothetically finish the race, and then you will just move down your 10 points to a new spot.
10 seconds.
10 seconds, yeah. A 10-second stop and go, you have to serve it during the race.
And you have to serve it within 2 laps.
2 laps. So you have to drive into the pit lane, you have to pull into your box, you have to stop your car, sit for 10 seconds, and then you have to pull away. So effectively, a 10-second stop and go is not a 10-second penalty. That's bumping you up to then 35 seconds of losing race time.
Yeah.
So Lando, he was confused even on the radio. He was like, why? He just had not realized his mistake in that moment. He went and served his 10-second stop and go. He was in 15th place last because so many people were tired. The whole time the commentators are like, this is harsh. We were even sitting like, I saw the 10-second stop and go. I was like looking at the McLaren comms and I was like, oh, we're screwed.
Yeah. Well, we didn't think that he was even going to get back up into points.
No, he did fantastic.
So it was, we were not happy at that point. No. It was, to put things into perspective, if Lando wouldn't have gotten the 10-second stop and go, if he would have even gotten like a 5-second penalty,
or a 10-second
or even just a normal 10-second penalty, there is still a good chance that McLaren literally would have finished the weekend securing the Constructors Championship.
Yeah.
But because of this, he got knocked down. He ended up in like, I think 13th. Keep in mind that at this point, only 15 cars were still running.
Yeah.
He just couldn't make his way back very much just after serving that penalty. It was a lot. I mean, you could blame it on a lot of things. Again, he should have slowed down for the yellow.
Absolutely.
No one's saying that. Will Joseph should have said something over the comms, but no one said anything to Max, and he still lifted off. And I think Max is just a little bit more, has a little bit more attention to details, and he knows. I think just has more experience than Lando in general. But so like Will should have said something, but.
The only thing that made me mad is while this is happening, Will is coming on over the radio talking about something completely different. Yeah. Why aren't you announcing to him that these yellows are happening? You should be announcing to him that green yellows are happening and he needs to be slowing. Right. Lando absolutely should have done it.
Well, it was hard too because kind of defending Will here a bit. Like, there was so much confusion on if there was a yellow flag because it was going back and forth. And McLaren came out and said that, like, at the time that he had to serve that yellow, like, we didn't even have that information on the pit wall.
Yeah.
It was only showing that it was yellow on the track with like the screens.
Yes.
So yeah, it could have been, I don't know.
There's so many woulda, coulda, shouldas.
Yeah, there wasn't really a way that you could have avoided it other than Lando seeing it again and lifting off. But again, super harsh penalty. A lot of harsh penalties. Lewis got for his penalty, he got a really harsh one. He got what did he get?
Lewis was speeding in the pit lane. So when the safety car came out, they it was on the main straight, so they had them go through the pits behind the safety car to avoid it so the debris could be cleaned up. And Lewis went in speeding, and then he also, Lando claimed that he brake checked him. I believe that was the instance where he got the penalty from.
I think so. Well, and the reason why he, quote-unquote, brake checked him is because he himself probably realized he was speeding and slowed down very quickly.
Yeah.
And then that was like a brake check to Lando, so.
Yeah.
So he got a penalty for that as well. It's a whole thing. At the end of the day, what caused this to happen is Charles ended up getting P2, Ferrari, and then Carlos, I think, was at P4 or P5?
Carlos was
P6.
Yeah, because Pierre's in front of him.
So, even with Oscar getting third and getting on the podium, it still wasn't enough of a gap with the points, which means that the Constructors' Cup is not being decided this race. It is going to come down to Abu Dhabi.
Whoa.
And there's a lot of reasons why the penalties shook out the way that they did.
Yeah.
Most likely, it is because there's a new race director. He wants to set a precedent. He wants to, bring the hammer down, set a reputation. I'm not to be messed with. All that, blah, 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 blah. And it is very much so. He's probably following the rule book. And I think if they were to bring these regulations and bring these new changes at the beginning of the season, I think it's a good idea. Yeah. It's very clear cut. It's probably a rule book somewhere. Yes, this is what it means. But to have that change happen without really notifying the drivers like, hey, we're going to start going exactly by the book, and also to have that not be consistent throughout the season, I think is a little unfair.
Like, if you watch any other sport, I know all the sports have their things, but like things are consistent. Like Lewis's like false start and things, like if there's a false start in the NFL, that's immediately the same thing, you get a 5-yard penalty. Like every single time that's happening. And also, not like love Lando, but he also had a false start earlier this year. Nothing happened to him. Yeah. That's not consistent whatsoever.
Yeah. It's just
the drivers need to know going in what's going to happen. They cannot be like, ooh, I had a false start. Am I going to...
It just brings way too much like room for bias and error.
Absolutely.
That there's no way that you can have trust in the system if you can consider they can do it case by case. They can do it however they decide.
That's not fair.
So while I do think that hopefully if they, if this new racing director carries this on for next season, I do think it's a good idea that they're as consistent. While I do think that's a harsh thing, if everyone gets that for the same instant, okay.
Great, that's fine.
But it's just not...
Now we're going to nitpick.
Yeah, exactly. So...
And I think overall, I'm not even just saying this because of what happened to Lando today, I think we need some fresh stewards coming in.
Yeah.
There are obviously biases against Max. There are obviously biases against McLaren, for Red Bull. Like, I think we need a fresh start. Like, and not even just McLaren and Red Bull. Like, obviously those are the, two big topics this year, but you can see it a little bit everywhere.
Yeah. Although, a thing to point out, Zhou did get some points.
That was
awesome. He got 4 points. He got an 8. Came in 8th. And also, it was the very first Sauber points of the year. Second to last race. It's fine. But at the end of the race, there was a 21-point difference between Ferrari and McLaren going into Abu Dhabi.
Yeah.
The conspiracy theory you were talking about earlier, we'll just touch on it really quickly. But so much from this GPDA and the treatment of the drivers and how the FIA handle things, it's coming to an explosion. And I honestly thought there would be more talk about it surrounding Las Vegas, because Las Vegas was the first race after that initial statement was put out.
Yeah.
But I think how the FIA and Formula One is handling that, as we talked about earlier, them saying it's none of your business, I get to decide what I want to decide, I think it is coming to blows. And just conspiracy theory is that a lot of the drivers, if not all of the drivers, were planning on striking the last race in Abu Dhabi.
If everything was done and dusted.
If everything was done and dusted, like, if everything was decided. Right now, the Drivers' Championship is decided. People assumed that the Constructors' Cup would be decided as well.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the drivers were just talks about, hey, maybe there is going to be a strike in Abu Dhabi. They can't really do that now because Ferrari would literally, like, never do that, and Charles and Carlos can't really do that.
Yeah.
But I just think it's interesting, and, like, with Esteban choosing not to race in the last race, if that is the case, that it's Esteban choosing that,
yeah.
I don't know, are we going to see other drivers also choosing it to, like, make a point?
I don't know. That's a good question.
I don't think so.
I don't think so, especially not the likes of, like, K-Mac or Joe, people who don't have drives next year.
Mm-hmm.
It's all very interesting to think about.
Yeah, I do think that even if not all 20 drivers decide not to race, I think that if a few key players decide not to race, it would cause enough of a statement to feel like an impact. And there isn't a huge amount of, like, big players that could.
Think there are enough that would.
I don't think there are enough that would, but I think there are enough that could.
Yeah.
Like, Max very well could.
Max very well could.
He has nothing to gain by racing. He already just secured the Drivers' Championship, and Red Bull is not going to be able to win the Constructors' Cup at this point. I mean, technically, I think technically, are they completely out?
So.
Okay. I know at the beginning of the
maybe if all
weekend,
4 of them DNF.
Yeah. But really, Red Bull's not winning the Constructors' Cup. Ferrari has to participate. Mercedes doesn't really have a lot to lose by not racing either. With George being the GPDA president, I don't know if maybe he would be one of the players, but George is also, like, not the type to strike at all.
George would be the type to
organize a strike and then be like...
I think he would also do it in less of a way of on a whole race where, like, trying to sit on something.
I could very much see Lewis striking.
Gosh.
Lewis doesn't even want to race in that Mercedes next weekend anyways.
Whoa. Lewis.
So, like, he's like, oh, guess I gotta strike.
Lewis is also pissed as hell. Like,
Aston Martin, Fernando, I could see striking. Like,
let's get another sleepover in the Bucks.
I don't know. It would just be kind of, like, crazy for it to happen. I don't think anything would.
No.
It is interesting, though, like, if it truly is, like, the rumor is that Esteban's choosing not to race. Like, is this just the first, maybe he, like, spilled the beans a little earlier than everyone else? Like, maybe he was like, I'm not doing it. And everyone was like, dude, you're supposed to wait until the day after the race. But I do wonder what's going to come from that.
Yeah.
If anything comes from that.
2 quick things before I forget them. Also, along the lines of Esteban, a reporter had posted that after he talked to him, that Esteban was like, thanking Alpine, thanking the team, thanking everybody, saying, like, next time, da-da-da. And the reporter was like, seems like Esteban forgot there's another race next weekend. Or, like, this isn't the last race.
Yeah, so it was definitely, like, predetermined.
Yeah.
That he was like that. Let's very quickly, we have a couple minutes left. Let's do our champagne pops and champagne problems.
Yeah, absolutely.
Champagne pop, Joe. Absolutely. He got driver of the day. Very well deserved. He, again, driving bar soap, he dragged that bitch over the finish line in P8. To quote James Harvey Blair, he dragged that bitch over the finish line.
Yeah, he
and
sure
God
did.
bless him for it, because it couldn't have been easy.
No, that could not have been easy.
So that was a pretty obvious champagne pop
champagne
there.
Pop goes to Joe.
Champagne problem.
The FIA.
Yeah, the FIA.
MBS.
In regards to both Lewis and Lando, I think both kind of got unfair.
And
Max, for qualifying. Really, in general, the FIA definitely gets the champagne problem.
That's not the first time this year either.
No, it's really not.
No.
You don't see, like, people, like, giving, like, the refs in NFL. Like, I mean, there's always someone that's unhappy with the refs, but, like, it was bad.
It was really bad.
But any final thoughts on this week?
I meant to say this earlier about the debris. It sucks so bad that also Carlos and Lewis had to get the punctures before they did anything effective.
Yeah. Once again, it should have been taken care of way before it caused all of these issues.
Yeah.
But, again, fuck the FIA. So,
Fuck the FIA.
Honestly. I think that's everything we had to talk about.
Yeah,
all in all,
so.
we have 1 weekend left of the season.
Woo!
I
think we're all ready for a break.
I'm sad that it's ending, but I'm also like,
no, we need a break.
I just need to decide. Like, I just need to know, okay, yes, they have the constructors. No, they don't.
I know.
This is happening. This isn't happening. And I need some details and information on Checo.
Absolutely. I forgot about this point. I want to say one thing, too. And I will stand by this. The constructors, it will be very unfortunate if we lose to Ferrari because of Lando getting the 10-second stop and go from not seeing the yellow. But it's not just up to the very second to last race, the very last race. We have had 24 total races. So if y'all are going to start shitting on him from that, like, let's go ahead and look at every other race.
Yeah.
And every other points we missed out. The team missing out on points for us. Silverstone.
No, absolutely. It is not Lando's fault. It's a team game. Like, Oscar's definitely left some points on the table as well. And we know that McLaren's strategy calls have left some points on the table. So, although, unfortunately, I do think Lando will blame himself.
For sure.
And someone's just going to have to keep an eye on him. Max Futrell is going to be working overtime. Max Futrell may be moving to Monaco for a couple months.
No, Martin Garrix is taking it back to the cave. Mars gonna be like knocking us right. Hey,
honey, let's go on a trip back to the caves.
Come on, wanna go to Vietnam again?
Yeah, no, and it's good that Lando has such good friends surrounding him because he needs it. Bless his heart. Anyways,
thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week doing our race recap of Abu Dhabi.
Who knows what's gonna happen?
Who knows what's gonna happen? We will. If something were to happen with the strike, or if anything were to happen, we will have an emergency episode. Don't worry. I don't think anything will, but God, if something does, it's gonna be crazy.
Also, if Jack Doohan is racing this last race, watch our socials.
Oh my gosh, we're gonna be
throwing a party.
Yeah, it'll be a really exciting time for Podium Pop. So, thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Make sure you go give us a follow. Make sure to comment your champagne pops, your champagne problems, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.